We're unmuted and we're going live.
Thank you.
Good morning again, everyone. I think we don't have Sean, but Tito, are you with us? Oh, we have Tito.
He's muted.
Oh, well, good morning, everyone, and this is the time and place of the Public Works Board meeting. It's under Chapter 10 on October 16th, and let's start with our first item on our agenda this morning is roll call.
Administrator Patrick with the roll call. First, Chair Adam Hand.
Present.
Vice Chair Sean Stewart. We'll mark him in as he makes himself present. Member Clint Bentley.
Present.
Member Tito Taberti.
He's present. He's got his line muted.
He's present. Member Kevin Lewis.
Present.
Thank you. Member and Director of Department Administration Laura Freed.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you, Ward. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Susan Stewart for the record. We've been informed that there is no request for public comment.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Oh, there he is.
There's Sean.
So for the record, Sean Stewart has joined us, and that brings us to agenda item 3 for possible action, which is acceptance and approval of the Public Works Board meeting minutes from August 26th, 27th, and September 16th. And we have they're in our package. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
How about a second?
Second.
Thank you. And that was Member Lewis, I think. Great. And again, I guess we'll use the any no's rather than. So if there are no objections to the motion, then we'll move it forward. Are there any objections to the motion? If not, then we'll move forward and our minutes are approved. And that will take us to
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. Could we just get an affirmative from everybody, just to make the record clear that everyone's voting in favor of the motion?
Sure.
In favor.
Sean Stewart in favor.
Kevin Lewis in favor.
Laura Freed in favor.
Adam Hand in favor. Thank you. So the motion moves forward. Thank you, Jeff. If we, I was trying to make it easier in this world we're living in. This is something that in other meetings that I've been participating in has been used to try to, that and the hand waving.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard when you're doing this electronically, but it's always good to try to make a sufficient record.
No, that's great. Thank you. Then the next item on our agenda this morning for possible action is discussion and possible action on the State Public Works Board Contractor Qualification Subcommittee recommendations. And I think Ms. Stewart will be sharing this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Susan Stewart for the record, and we have a little bit of information to go through this morning, so please bear with me. I will be as clear and succinct as possible. You'll see here, there's in the agenda item number 4, there's an outline. We'll go a little bit over the background. We have required revisions to our contractor qualification process, other revisions, and then finally we have revised documents that the subcommittee created by this board is recommending for board approval. First, the background and overview. NRS requires that the board adopt regulations governing the division's qualification of contractors' process. The NAC also requires that the board approve the application and the scoring and weight of criteria. We've had, it doesn't seem possible, but it's been since 2009, we've had that new requirement regarding the scoring of fines and discipline. And based upon some challenges with scoring that, we created, the board, I should say, created a subcommittee to take a look at the contractor qualification process. So the subcommittee was created October 22, 2019, and the subcommittee met 2 times, December 11, 2019, and then July 20, 2020. The subcommittee considered changes required by statute, and then other, I would say, omissions in the current scoring process, and then the scoring of the OSHA and MSHA fines, and then there were some other minor revisions. One of the things that we talked about in the subcommittee was if these changes are implemented, the board will monitor the impact of these changes and report back to the board. There's 2 separate application processes. One is our application for over 100,000, and the second is our application for smaller projects, smaller qualification under 100,000. We have a couple categories, as I mentioned. We have required revisions, and the required revisions are scoring of contractor evaluations, disclosure of applicant's litigation history, the addition of a pass-fail category for breach of contract for a $25 million project, public works project, I should say. And then also adding a category of pass-fail to the under $100,000 application for how that's actually handled if and when a contractor discloses Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The scoring of the contractor evaluation is the first required revision. The NAC was revised to require that the State Public Works Division consider each final evaluation of the performance of the prime contractor on a public work of the state. And I emailed you yesterday simply for your reference that evaluation form so you could just see what it looks like. We're not making any changes to that. And the recommendation from the subcommittee is that we score that consistent with what the board had already approved. And just FYI, that contractor evaluation form was developed in public meetings along with the board. So that was the subject of quite a bit of discussion and consensus between the board as well as the contractor community. The recommendation, and this is on page 2 of your action item for agenda item number 4, The recommendation is that the contractor performance evaluation be considered in the qualification application and scored in a manner consistent with prior board action. What you'll actually be asked to approve is the changes to the form, and so I'll go over each one of those specifically when we discuss whether the board is going to approve the recommendation and changes to those documents. The second required revision is the disclosure of applicant litigation history. Last year, the board approved revisions to the NAC expanding the information that a contractor provides regarding their litigation history. What we're asking for is they disclose all litigation related to their public works projects, whether they initiated it, whether they won, whether they lost. We're now asking for that information. What the subcommittee realized is it's very challenging to decide how to score that. And what the subcommittee is recommending is that we collect that data, that we report it, and that at some point we revisit and see if there may be an appropriate way to score the reported litigation history. The third required revision is to disclose the breach of contract for projects over 25 million. And this is simply implementing what is required by statute in NRS 338-1379 sub 8. And you'll see on page 3 of agenda item number 4, the recommendation is to add a pass-fail category as required by statute. The last required revision is to the under $100,000 application. As it currently exists, a contractor is required to disclose on their under $100,000 application whether they have filed Chapter 7, Chapter 13, or Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But staff were given no direction on what to do with that information. The recommendation from the subcommittee is that Chapter 7 bankruptcy be evaluated as a pass-fail. This is the same way that a Chapter 7 bankruptcy is treated on the larger application, so it's consistent with our other process. We have other revisions. This is the challenges such as Granite's appeal this morning. We have a requirement that a contractor disclose whether they've been disciplined or fined by a state contractors board or another state or federal agency for conduct that relates to the ability of the applicant to perform the work. What we're finding is that the current scoring system can result in minor administrative violations, less than $2,000, having a disproportionate impact on a contractor's score. Staff cannot make a decision that an administrative fine is unrelated to the contractor's ability to perform the work. So what the committee has recommended is something that more accurately would assess that. The subcommittee has also recommended something that levels out how big an impact this section of the scoring has on the overall application. What we're finding is that the OSHA and MSHA violations have a disproportionate impact vis-a-vis the contractor's performance history or bonding. So we're just trying to level that off so it has a similar impact to the other scored sections of the application. The recommendation of the subcommittee is that points will only be deducted for serious repeat or willful OSHA and MSHA violations. The subcommittee is also recommending revising the point deduction associated with the amount of the fine. The proposed scoring would begin deducting points at fines of $5,000 or more. Finally, the subcommittee also recommends capping the points deducted in this section at 20 points. And this is consistent with the scoring of all other sections in the qualification application. There are also, you'll see there's some minor edits. We've cleaned up some typos. We've raised the qualification amount from 30 million to 50 million, more consistent with what contractors are, the amount of money that these projects cost and the amount of the limits that they're asking for in their qualification process. What I have attached is attachment A is the revisions to the application over 100,000. Attachment B is the scoring that staff does, and then attachment C is the under 100 application, which is just provided for context. That remains unchanged. And then C1 is the revised evaluation form. And Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd just like to go through each of the exhibits that were the subcommittee is recommending for board approval.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you can follow along, I'm going to go through exhibit A, which is, this is the application that the contractor fills out and the information that they have to disclose. The first change is on page 5, and this is where we require the disclosure of a breach of contract for a public work. This will be a pass-fail. Page 6, some updating of the reference statutes. Page 10, this is where we require the disclosure of prior litigation. Page 11, I just want to point out, this is where the contractor is going to disclose their OSHA and MSHA violations. We haven't changed what they're required to disclose, but we have changed how we'll score it. Page 12 is just a minor edit. And then finally on page 22 is where we are asking the contractor to disclose their prior contractor performance evaluations. They're asked to list every project that they've completed with the Public Works Division within the last 5 years and include a completed performance evaluation form for each one of those projects. And those are the changes to the application. Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you wanted to, there was a preference to ask for a motion now or go through all 3 documents and then ask for a motion at that time?
My preference would be to go through all 3.
All right.
That's okay with the rest of the board?
Okay, I don't hear anyone complaining or objecting. So I'll go on with Exhibit B. In Exhibit B, this is how staff will score and implement the changes that we're proposing, that the subcommittee is proposing. The first change that you'll see on page 1 of Exhibit B is you see the 50 million. We've raised the cost category from 30 million to 50 million. Here, you'll also see the disclosure of the breach of contract over 25 million, that's a pass-fail as required by statute. At the top, you'll see some corrections to the referenced statutes. Down at the bottom, this is how staff will score the OSHA and MSHA and other violations. And you'll see the scoring and deduction of points starts at 5,000 and above. And then the last category is 25,000 and above. And on the next page, you'll see we've added a maximum of 20 points deducted. Finally, on page 3, Part 8 has been added, and this is where the contractor performance evaluation will be scored. This is consistent with prior board action and the subcommittee's recommendation. I would point out that we're scoring this, and I think as we begin this process, if there are challenges or hiccups, we would certainly report that back to the board and ask for help and guidance as needed. But this will certainly get us on the way to complying with the statute as we're required to. And then the last page, it just simply, one of the things that is we've revised here is that if a contractor excels in the performance of performing a public works project, and that is reflected in the evaluation, they actually can have points added to their evaluation, so, or their application. Okay, so that is Exhibit B. That is the scoring of the over $100,000 application. Last is Exhibit C, which again is just provided for context. You can see it's a very short application. This is intentional to encourage smaller contractors to qualify and perform public works projects. The change that the subcommittee is recommending is reflected on C1. And that is simply where if the contractor discloses a Chapter 7 bankruptcy within the last 5 years, that will be scored as a pass-fail. And that is the conclusion of my presentation of the subcommittee's recommendations.
Member Hemsworth, thank you, Ms. Stewart. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Stewart? I have one, and it's on page 22 of the Exhibit A. And I looked at this, but it just sort of dawned on me that this might be something that might be in a database. The requirement that the contractor provide the evaluation forms, wouldn't Public Works already have those? Or would they be like buried in a file, or are they in an electronic format where they would already be easily? I'm curious as to why. I would think that Public Works already have them. That's why I'm asking the question.
Right. For the record, Susan Stewart, I think we would put the burden on the contractor first. Then, if they needed assistance locating those documents, we would certainly help them, which, you know, it's a very collaborative process. I would hope they have them, and if they don't, I would hope we have them.
Maybe that begs another question. Out of curiosity, how are they stored here? Are they electronic or?
Susan Stewart, for the record, my understanding is that they are electronic, part of the project file.
Right. Board Patrick, for the record, they'd be located on our server by each project.
Right,
So that would be more of a challenge
absolutely.
for us pulling them out.
You answered my next question, which was, are they in a database as opposed to, thank you. I don't have any more questions. Any other members have questions? Hearing